All right. So I'm Guido. This is the True Potential Show. And today I have Sathyarti. Sathyarti, the master body worker. Um, yeah, there's so many things that you did. Last time we did a whole introduction with rebalancing, myofascial energetic release. You did also therapy sessions. But you're almost half a century approaching the milestone. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Guido, for inviting me.
I had a lot of fun last time, and yeah, really learned something. So it's always interesting when I also get that feedback that we directly have a second conversation and more in depth about like the different uh, syndromes of pain, more in depth about myofascial energetic release and how it touches upon these different syndromes of pain. And yeah, so kick it off, please, with actually one of the pains that most people are. It's maybe a disease, almost number one. Maybe not like for death, but definitely for suffering. Lower back pain. So what's your approach on this? Because there's so many ways, so many different varieties of lower back pain. But yeah, how do you look towards it? What's your view on it?
Okay, good. I'm glad you asked that question, Guido. An hour ago, I had a woman come to me with bad lower back pain, actually, and we did one session, and she's booking more, but after the session, she was 85% better, and she had pain going down her pelvis into her foot.
Ah,
Also, it was ischial pain.
okay.
My approach, and the first thing that's the most important part of this approach is, or at least it's half the healing
Mm-hmm.
for something as big as lower back pain. And we got to get that at some point, humanity, 80% of human beings that live on this planet have chronic pain. Chronic pain means pain that's been there over 3 months and can be there for years, but starts over 3 months. 80%, that's an unbelievable number. Two-thirds of that pain is lower back pain. Two-thirds of all chronic pain in the body is lower back pain. Now, why lower back pain? Why it is the lower back? I mean, there's a lot of theory about what causes, why is it such a huge problem, an epidemic?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, First of all, what I'd like to say is that this is not accepted by the medical world, but the medical world is doing a very bad job with chronic pain. They, if you go to a doctor with chronic pain, chronic low back pain, you're not going to get helped. Uh, in fact, they'll often give you a diagnosis that's not um, accurate. They'll give you a wrong diagnosis.
Yeah, you
Because
have
what they do is,
clients a lot, right? That got wrong diagnosis.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What they do is they look for some kind of what we'll call structural problem. And they do that through x-rays, MRIs, CAT scans. Yeah, they look into the lumbar spine. And what they
Mm-hmm.
see is they see disc degeneration. Yeah, like the woman I worked with today, I said, "What did you get a diagnosis?" She said, "Yeah, I had a diagnosis that between lumbar 4 and lumbar 5, there was a major disc degeneration. And they said, you probably need an operation, but you can just postpone it for a while." Yeah, she was about 48. And uh,
Oh wow.
and I said, okay. And I heard that. And then I said, but I'm going to give you my assessment of what's causing your lower back pain. It's going to be very different than that. Because when you get a diagnosis like that from an x-ray and from a doctor or an orthopedic doctor also, the first thing that happens is that you feel that I'm damaged goods. Yeah, there's this damage, there's structural degeneration of a disc And a disc is what holds two joints together, L4 and L5 in her case. And it holds them together. And in the middle of that disc, you have nucleus pulpus, it's called. It's a thick oil fluid that makes that a hydraulic disc. So it can move in all directions. And it's hydraulic, meaning it can't compress. The fluid in it won't allow it to compress too much. When it degenerates, the tissue starts to deteriorate a little bit and it gets thinner, yeah?
Mm-hmm. So
That
I'm just getting a photo. Just I love the depth that we're approaching. Just getting a photo just for a second for people that are checking this out. Like L4, L5. That's like the lumbar part of the spine. And let me just share this for a second that we have like visual image of what you're talking about. Can you see this?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, exactly. So she had like
L4, L5.
L4, and there this degeneration. That was the assessment.
Diagnosis. Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that, like how that looks like different vertebrae have different numbers with the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, you know. So
And the discs.
just for the people that are like not as advanced as you
good.
are.
Thank you for sharing that picture. Really nice. So anyway, that was her diagnosis, degeneration there. Eventually, she probably she had sciatica. She was limping when she came in. After an hour and 15-minute session this morning, she was 85% better and very grateful, actually, because she's had the pain for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And it starts to get scary when you have it for that long. And she said she's 46. She said she felt like a grandma because she was just crippled. She was compromised.
Yeah.
And it's very emotional also when you have that kind of pain. Yeah, you go into fear, you go into feeling of insecurity, you can't feel you don't feel grounded. The pain takes over your daily life. It starts in the morning, it goes through your day. Yeah, anyway, I know it from personal experience. So I told her what it was, and this is a very important part, it's half the healing, is that the fascia, the connective tissue, which is the system, it's a holistic system that runs through the body. And its main thing is that every part of the body is wrapped in fascia. So it's a container for every part, down to every cell. And they say you have something like 60 trillion cells. So every membrane around a cell is a wrapping of fascia that holds that cell together. Every organ is wrapped in fascia and penetrated by fascia. Every muscle is wrapped in fascia, penetrated. Bones have a wrapping of fascia. So fascia is interconnected throughout. It's a webwork, a three-dimensional webwork. In its natural state, it's fluid, it's strong, but it's elastic.
It's elastic as well.
It has movement, yeah, that goes through, and fluids get through, and energy moves through. When we're in a holding pattern, either through traumatic events or through misuse of the body, what happens is that the fascia contracts, and it's held in a contraction. And in that state of contraction, it causes pain. At a certain level, it causes pain. And low back is the main place where it causes pain. It's the big lumbar fascia that wraps all around the low back and around the sacrum. That causes pain when it's very, very tight. And that area gets very tight. And why it causes pain? Because within the fascia are sensory nerves. It's the main sensory system in the body behind the nervous system. It has 250 million sensory nerves, the fascial system. And some of those nerves are called nociceptors, and nociceptors are pain receptors.
Pain receptors.
And so when there's a certain level of contraction in the fascia, it presses on those pain receptors.
Exactly.
And it causes pain. It can be mild ache. If it's stronger, it causes strong pain. So what they do is they take pictures of the disc, but they don't look at the fascia. So it's an old, out of date way of diagnosing chronic pain in the body, in this case, lumbar pain.
And that's
But they don't
also,
look at the fascia. They don't look at soft tissue. What do you want to say, Guido?
I'm just curious, like as confirmation, is that also why they are so fast, like reaching to a hernia and to a surgery?
Yeah. So they'll say, what a herniated disc means is that the fluid, the nucleus pulpus in the middle, is starting to go through the cracks of the disc and it leaks some. Even that is not causing the pain, funnily enough. And I'm not
Although
saying
more and
this,
more
I'm
people
not saying
are,
this just because I am psychic or I make it up.
no,
This is
no,
like research now over numbers of years, and many clinics and numbers of real experts are working with soft tissue to release pain. The German national team trainer, the one who's working on the people when they're injured and to keep them from being injured, when they won the World Cup also in football. Uh, he's a fascial worker, and he's explaining the same thing, that the nociceptors are what's causing the pain. It's those pain receptors in the fascia when it's tight. Now,
hmm
fascia, when it's really tight, it compresses and the fluid in the fascia gets squeezed out, like if you squeezed a sponge. And if it stays tight like that, what happens is the fluid loses flow in that area. There's no fluid flow because the small capillaries that bring fluid and blood into the area, they get cut off. And the cellular matrix, which is a fluid part of the fascial system. Fascia is 70% fluid, and that fluid is like a very watery gel.
and that's a
Now,
healthy
when it's in
fascia, right?
constant trauma, constant tension,
I just want to confirm, like, okay, 70%, but if the fascia gets like compressed or contracted a lot, then the fluid goes out. So then
it dries up.
exactly, and then
And
it
the
becomes
fluid
stiff.
that fluid that's in it turns to glue, and everything gets glued together and dry. So you see that it's all stuck, and when you palpate it, when you touch it with your fingers, it feels like bone. It doesn't feel like soft tissue anymore. It feels
No,
like
no, no.
very hard and dry and lumpy, and that kind of chronic, what they call fibrosis,
Yeah.
is a major, major cause of low back pain. So, for instance, what I did with this woman is I changed her whole paradigm, her whole understanding of where the pain comes from.
Hmm.
And she heard what I said, but probably didn't believe it. She's still believing the old diagnosis because it's a doctor with a machine that's showing her a picture. And then I did the work, and afterwards she was so much better. And then I say to her, did I just regenerate your disc? No. What I did is I released the holding pattern, not just in the low back, but in the pelvis, in the legs, in the upper back, in the front of the low back, the psoas and the iliacus muscles. And by doing that and having you move and having you breathe, you're also releasing that holding back of all the energy that's stuck, because the holding in the fascia is congested, held back energy. Now, this is an interesting fact. And why low back pain? Yeah, they say because it's in the middle of the body, and because we, as the only animal really that stands on two legs and has arms and fingers that are free and opposable thumbs, uh, haven't learned to stand correctly on our two legs. Therefore, that is the most vulnerable part. Yeah, that might play a small role in it.
hmm
But what fear lives in this whole segment around the abdomen, the lower abdomen? The
Yeah.
fear of abandonment. Now, that is a huge fear that collectively humanity suffers from, because we were not nourished enough as children. We were not taken in. So we all have this fear of rejection, of separation, the pain of separation, and it lives in the low back.
And is that
So
also like especially in our Western way of living, because we are like so focused on the future and moving and like not focused indeed like what you said on nourishment and on proper caretaking of each other. And is that
is
have you
that
seen that
especially a
parallel?
Western? You know, it's something because I do travel around the world with my work, and I go to India for a couple of months a year. I go to China for about a month and a half every year when the pandemic wasn't here,
Yeah, before that.
and I also Israel and Greece, and yeah, culturally there's areas that have more uh, low back pain,
Mm.
and India has less low back pain.
India has less low
Yeah,
back pain.
China has low back pain, I noticed, but I didn't do a consensus. It would be interesting to look that up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But this, it's also very universal because that wound, that pain of separation, that feeling of fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, and how easily that gets triggered in us, over small things or bigger things. It's a huge wound that, as an individual and a collective unconscious of humanity, it's a huge wound, this abandonment wound, and it is in the low back and lower belly area. Yeah, and therefore lower back pain is so prevalent also because we learn to walk on two legs and we're not really upright. But why are we bent forward? Why are we arching our back and our pelvis goes forward? Those are all psychological and emotional holding patterns generally. Now, also how we use our body, sitting in front of computers all day long and crouched over with our head looking at a computer, that obviously also puts a lot of strain on low
Yeah,
back.
yeah, and this one, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. Exactly. Phones, man. It puts a lot of strain. And we're not just talking about older people getting low
No,
back pain.
no, it's
Younger
actually
people, the main
below
workforce.
30. Yeah, below
In
30.
America, more people miss work because of low back pain than any other disease.
Wow.
It's billions and billions and billions of dollars spent through the healthcare industry on low back pain. Now, myofascial energetic release gets to the cause of low back pain, and I can help so many people, or people that practice this type of work can help so many people with low back pain and
Yeah.
keep them out of pain. That's the thing. It's not just you help them for like a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but you actually change the whole dynamic and they stay out of pain. And it's because the cause of the pain is in the contraction of the fascia. And what's behind that contraction is some kind of emotional holding pattern generally. So when you bring emotional awareness to the cause of the pain and you release energetically, not just releasing the tissue, but release the energy that's held within that tissue, meaning that there's a blockage of energy, a blockage of fluid, there's congestion around the area of pain. It's highly congested. And the tissue releases, when there's movement and breath, you start to open and release that held back energy charge and it spreads through the body. And then the release is a much more fundamental release than just releasing the structural holding pattern in the body. And through that education, understanding where it comes from. I have people always read John Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain, because he was a genius. He just gave people an understanding of where their pain come from. Through the understanding, their pain went away. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of people worked with him over the years. He's a rehabilitation, he died now, but he's a rehabilitation doctor in Columbia University in New York State. Uh, the medical world, even with all his credentials, the medical world didn't accept his diagnosis, even though he helped hundreds of thousands of people, even congressmen and big stars, you know, and still they wouldn't accept it. See, they're so held in their belief that this is what it is, that when something comes, and it's starting to come more because people want to get better.
Exactly, exactly. People want to find a way like out of their pain, right? Like
Yeah,
that's like number one. If you are in pain, and I notice it like also with a client of mine, like then nothing else really matters anymore in the world. I mean, the main problem in life becomes then the pain and getting out of it.
exactly. Exactly. And it takes over not only you're limiting your physical movement because they become so limited. And if the pain is there for a while, you get used to the limitations almost. You stop moving in ways that'll hurt it more. And then what happens is that emotionally and psychologically you also start to shrink because in that level of chronic pain, there's a lot of fear. Yeah. It happened to me when I was in my 40s, man.
In
I
your
was
40s.
early 40s, and I was doing I was in a session actually, and no, not true. I was dancing in a disco, and suddenly, boom, my back. It never happened before. And then that became a chronic pain for about 10 years.
Oh wow.
And it was come and go, but it was always there. And sometimes I'd have episodes where it was really bad.
And
And
now and
then I
now.
met a man. This was in
Mhm.
San Diego, California. I was doing body work, teaching body work, and I met a man who said the pain is coming because of highly contracted tissues. And
Who is the man?
he released those tissues. He released them and released them and released them. And this guy saw 9 people a day uh, for 4 days a week, 1 hour sessions. And he
Wow.
and he was so deep. The guy went so deep. I mean, it was excruciating, but it worked. After 3 sessions with him, I was like, wow. And I had tried everything, man. And then he gave me the whole understanding that pain, his father was a chiropractor. He was a chiropractor. Uh, and he stopped chiropractics and he just developed this method. And then he taught me the method and then I refined it because we became good friends and I refined it and brought it into my work.
So,
And,
so who was this
and ever
man?
since then, the work that I teach and do in myofascial energetic release is, in my opinion, and is one of the best methods to help people who have pain syndromes in
Hmm.
any type of pain syndrome, you know, except for if you've torn ligaments and things like that, that just needs time to heal. That's an injury.
Yeah,
But
but still, like in myofascial energetic release, I mean, I'm not like saying like you don't need a surgery, but like there's a lot of after surgery is like this heavy impact on your body, and yeah, there needs something, or you need something. I needed something that also helps to make the fascia again more breathing and fluid, right? Like in my left knee, I still like I mean, it's not that it's hurting every day, but it's still like a weaker spot in my body than in my
what did you
right.
do to your left knee?
I had a torn anterior ligament. I was football in America, was a soccer player, and I got like a bad tackle on my knee, and my ligament, anterior ligament on my left knee, just like torn. And yeah, since that I've had a wrong analysis of a physiotherapist, and then yeah, it took a while before I got the like the analysis and the MRI scan, and they really saw okay, there's really something torn. It's really like okay, you need surgery. And I had I was crying, like then like, but not only because of sadness that I couldn't like move for a while, but also because I finally had an analysis that spoke to me like this is what I have, this is why I can't move anymore as before. So it was a combination that really spoke to me.
Yeah, oh, good. So they were diagnosed there was a torn anterior cruciate ligament.
Yeah.
and they did the surgery. And then after the surgery is when you need, at a certain time after the surgery, like 6 weeks after, 5 weeks after, is when you need rehabilitation. They did it with the physios, but if you get good fascial work,
Mm-hmm.
not just on your knee, but through the whole leg and
Yeah.
then up and through the body, then I know that because I do that with people post-operation, and it really helps.
Yeah, I
But
believe
what
that.
I'm saying basically is that 90% of pain in the body comes from overcontracted fascia. And the cause of overcontracted fascia, most of the cause at least, is emotional and psychological holding patterns. Now, that's hard for people to understand. That's where John
Exactly.
Sarno is so brilliant, because in our culture, we deny emotions. Yeah, we deny these things. So for people to say, oh, yeah, the reason I have a low back pain is because I'm emotionally repressing my fear and my
For yeah, for
pain and my anger. They don't want to see that, and
no.
it's just like that's not under a part. But as I work with people, I share that and I have them read this book. And once they get it, it's like a light goes on. And then when the pain starts, if the pain starts to come back, they remember it. It's true with me too. Since I understand this, a pain will start to come and I'll say, this is what it is. And then the pain just starts to dissipate. And you don't take it so like, oh my God, there's something wrong. When somebody's in high level of chronic pain and their movement is basically very small and there's very strong pain, yeah, it takes time. You need bed rest, you need light work, at that level. But like the woman today, she was limping and she had a lot of pain, but she could still function mostly. When she sat for a long time, for a while, then when she got up, she was in a lot of pain. When she came up from the morning after sleeping, she was in a lot of pain. She couldn't bend forward. After the session, again, she had no pain or very little.
Yeah, like 85% better, she
Yeah, and
said.
then I said, yeah, let's do, 5 sessions. And then to make sure we can really get this better and keep it better. Um,
I'm
so
just
it's very amazing because people that have that kind of pain, as you know, Guido, their whole life is basically compromised. Their lifestyle is compromised.
exactly.
And it's not just that it causes you pain, it causes you so much psychological and emotional stress and pain. And your self-image goes down, man, because you're living in this level of pain all the time. And the unfortunate and really criminal reality of it is that if so many people are living in the prison of pain and they don't have a key to get out, because what they're dealing with is a medical system that is telling you this is what the pain is and it's the wrong diagnosis, and then they never come out of pain. And I get so many of those people coming from all over Europe, or when I'm in China, or from parts of China, because they hear word of mouth that I can help them. And yeah, it's not just me either. It's people I train. I talk to them, and they're helping so many people in pain.
That was a good metaphor, living in a prison of pain and the key to get out. And I just want to like share this again because you spoke about it and you share things quite in a row. Like this is the book you're speaking about, right? Like John Sarno,
Yeah,
the
healing
healing
back
back
pain.
pain.
That's the book. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think if you're listening to this or you're working with people and you have clients, buy some of these books. They can Kindle it. It's in German, it's in Dutch. It's really they've translated it into many languages. It's really a big seller. And if English, here it is. And it's small book, easy to read, and it'll really support the healing. Another good book, if you go up on that, is another book he wrote, is called The Divided Mind. It's at the bottom of the screen
Yeah, I see it
there.
here.
Yeah. And if you have, you should read that. I read that many times. And if you have diseases, lots of diseases, he's saying, and it's becoming more and more uh, understood that it's true that our psychosomatic, that the stress we live in, the emotional repression, the psychological stress that we live in is causing a lot of dysfunctions in our lungs, in our hearts, in our guts. Uh, yeah, all over the, in our kidneys, in our livers. So he's teaching us how to understand that and come out of that also and to become just more healthy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Now I was just like thinking about what you said before that. Like you learned, or a man taught you, like to get out of your own lower back pain. Who was that man?
Yeah, and that was a long time ago, Guido, man. That was like, God, I was living, it was like in 1989. And then
Yeah,
he just
and
said to me, he showed me a book called, he didn't even know about fascia. It was called Chronic Contraction in Muscles Causes Pain.
but who was this man? The
His name was Penachek. His name was that's a while ago. His name was Alex Penachenko,
no.
and he was working out of San Diego, and he had a small clinic right in a beautiful place right near the beach, man. And but a small clinic, didn't even have a receptionist, and he saw 9 people a day, and he did an hour on each person. He did 4 days a week, and I mean, you walked in there, and he worked so deep. He had tools like a marble tool, which he would push in like a big end on it. And he'd stand on it. He had a small little room he worked in and low table. And he'd stand on the table with his heel would go in. And it was, and he had this where I learned the number system where 6 is a good pain, 7 is strong but manageable, 8 is too much. He
Yeah,
taught me that. And I don't never knew why he used it, man, because I would say 8, 8. And he would go, he wouldn't change the pressure. So I adapted that. And now I work with the thing and I stay longer and I wait. I mean, since then, it's got much more sophisticated how to work
yeah,
with fascia.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's painful. I mean, I'd sit in that waiting room and I'd be waiting for my session and I'd hear screaming. And I was like, God, I'm used to screaming because I work on a lot of emotions. But what about the guy who just sat here first time, man? And he was 2 months booked.
2 months ahead.
With him for 2 months because even though it was that painful and local, he didn't do the whole body. He just worked around the area of pain. He was so effective, and
Yeah,
people
yeah.
would stay out of pain. After 15 sessions with him, I had no pain, and I've never had low pain, back pain since. And they wanted to do an operation on my low back.
Yeah, exactly. I had actually a lady the other day that also I did like 4 5 sessions with her, and now her surgery got canceled and
Oh,
everything.
cool.
Yeah,
See?
yeah,
So
it's really
cool.
amazing, really
So
amazing.
cool.
At least she had like hernia symptoms, and they like all this medical, yeah, this whole process. She went down to it, but she really didn't feel like having the surgery. But she was taking a lot of painkillers, and that also she really decreased that amount. So it's incredible, like how much results after a couple sessions already.
Yeah, that's it's very satisfying. And as a massage therapist or a body worker, if you learn these tools of how to work with pain, it's going to increase your business so much because again, 80% of humanity at some point has chronic pain. And any given moment, I just read a statistic for low back pain, any given moment, 50% of America is somehow suffering from chronic pain.
Wow.
And so if you learn to work with it, and you just, so many students, not just somebody like myself who's been doing body work for almost a half century, but students who learned it not so long ago, I listen to their stories. They're helping so many people in pain. So you don't have to have years of experience. You can learn this and help people come out. And that's a huge contribution as obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and you know, there's the amount of people with pain, the amount of people that are learning this type of thing. You know, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not. We're not going to save humanity from chronic pain.
No,
But
no, but
we'll help
it's about
all
your
the
area.
individuals who come, or most of them.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, like what is gonna say? It's all about helping people to save themselves, essentially, right? Like, and to yeah, and these tools will spread more and more, and as these they do, people will have more and more like ownership over their pain, and understand that it's really about their own process, and it's not about like going to a therapist and asking them like, hey, can you please fix me, and instead of that, it becomes really more of a process where people really take their life in a different way, and they go really in a different on a different path. And that's also some, and I'm sure you see those parallels as well, that like to really get out of something, you have to change things, right? It's not only
Exactly. And
about
in this
feeling
case,
it.
you have to change your understanding of where the pain comes from and bring emotional awareness to your life. And that's something, it's a big shift for people because there's so much emotional unawareness. Yeah, emotions are held deep in the unconscious. And when they start to come up, you know, emotions are probably the most powerful energy we're dealing with at any given moment. Yeah, and there's so much emotional pain and fear that we're just not dealing with. We just keep it down, and our way to deal with it, to manage it or cope with it, is just distract from it, not to talk about it, not to work on it, but just keep it down, not to get educated around it. None of our education is teaching us, you know, how to deal with our emotional pain. And yet
No.
our whole life, most people's whole life and our life is so influenced in a negative way by all this repressed emotion. And now I'm sharing that the 90% of our physical pain is because of the holding in the soft tissue is being caused by repressed emotional pain. But you know, our emotional pain, when you start to understand that, then you start to have an, a pathway into understanding and releasing emotions and being more emotionally honest. You know, emotional honesty creates intimacy. And you know, the main pain that humanity is suffering from is the pain of separation. No wonder low back pain, pain of abandonment, the pain of separation, feeling isolated, feeling lonely. And now during the pandemic, more than ever, uh, because people aren't as interactive. Yeah, so they go online to be interactive, but it's obviously it's not the same. You need
No,
physical connection.
it's not the
Yeah,
same.
with people, and that pain of separation is the main pain, and that separation is because huge part of it is because we've never learned to be emotionally authentic or honest. And by doing that, we're creating connection. Yeah, and you know it when you have somebody, a friend or somebody you're close to, or a person is just that is emotionally honest, where they're owning their feelings and there's a vulnerability in how they're sharing it. There's a realness. Boom, it opens something.
Yeah, exactly,
Feel
exactly.
connected with that person. And when they're blaming, when they're denying, when they're in judgment around their feelings, it just creates a wall of separation. And that wall of separation manifests in the body as highly contracted tissue, what Wright called armor. And that armor causes pain at a certain level of contraction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So emotional ownership creates intimacy. Was that what you said?
Yeah, ownership and sharing.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a new level. And I so appreciate that, like especially like I lived for 2 years in Canary Islands, and then when I came back, I started to spend way more time. I got this like insight that I really had to go back, also for my organization, but also to really connect with my family again in a deeper way. And I understood like all of a sudden like, hey, but we and especially my brother and my father and me are really like sharing into a deeper level. So what we do like every now and then, like we used to do like every 2 weeks, but now it hasn't happened for a month, I think. But like in during the pandemic especially, we sit down with the four of us and we open it, and it becomes really like a sharing where also a lot of emotions come up. And like we really take time with each other to share. And I notice like how deep that goes, but also how connected I especially feel after that. Like, whoa, like there's so much more space or something to let everything be. And yeah, the feeling of that openness is indescribable, like especially for a mind to understand alone.
Well, you're lucky, Guido, that you have a family that can do that.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Yeah,
I take
that's
that in.
common, man.
No. I think it's very exceptional, and that's why I feel like, yeah, just like that speaks to the quote that the ownership that you shared about, like more and more people. And I notice it also, for example, my father, like when he's not very, I mean, he never learned from his father like to speak about emotions, and there was a lot of anger build up. Like my grandfather is like had a trauma from the world. I mean, he passed away. We had trauma from the World War. He was captured, imprisoned in Japan for like 5 years almost, and that just creates a lot of, yeah, yeah. I mean, I cannot even like imagine how crazy that would be those 5 years. But that made him really like numb to some deeper emotional sharing. I mean, he never had really a deep or never, as I know, as far as I know, had really a deep sharing about that. He lived his life, and he lived a beautiful life, like until 96 years old he turned. But it's crazy to imagine like how much repression of anger that must have been going through, especially when you're imprisoned and when the person or the people that are imprisoning you are just like, yeah, outnumbering you big time and having more
Yeah,
tools than you do.
prisoner of war in a Japanese prison, that's like a nightmare, man.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I noticed like that of course my father was born like way after that, but of course that translates some of that he gives on to his kids in some way. They become more, yeah. I don't know, like maybe you know it better,
Yeah, I
like.
mean, the trauma gets passed on.
Exactly.
It is part of the constellation, you know. It goes from one generation to the next, and then somebody's got to break it. And it sounds like in your case that your father opening, your brother opening, and you sharing honestly, emotionally honest, you're already starting to break that cycle very much. Some part of the family tree at some part of the constellation has to break the cycle or not. You know, it just goes on in many places. People just don't wake up. Yeah.
No,
And
no,
your
no.
family is, you know, your father to
I
his,
will thank him for that
yeah,
opening.
yeah. Well, that's beautiful. How old is he?
He's now 63.
Oh, he's younger than me, man.
Yeah.
Okay. I never think of myself as like old enough to be your father. I'm not sure why, but I,
No. I mean, maybe a lot of playfulness, young, yeah, youthful playfulness is, and the energy is still flowing in you, right? Like that must be
yeah.
definitely a part of it.
Yeah, and also, I just want to go back to this thing with pain. Another, you know, major area of pain that I work with, that people come to me with as clients, is knee pain. You
Knee
know,
pain.
and knee pain is so common, and it's so misdiagnosed again, because what they do is they take a picture of the knee, and they'll do both an x-ray and an MRI and a few tests, and they'll see degenerative cartilage. Cartilage is the hard tissue that's between bones, yeah, or they might see something with the meniscus, but generally the cartilage, they'll say, is degenerative. I know I had this with my left knee.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, oh, so bone is touching bone or very close. And then what they'll do is they'll say, oh, they'll look and they'll say there's arthritis. In my case, they said it was advanced. arthritis. And so then again, this was only about 12 years ago, 11 years ago, 11 years ago. They told me I need, or two orthopedic surgeons in a row, I got a second opinion. I needed the operation. I
Wow.
needed a prosthetic knee. That's a huge thing. Knee's the biggest joint in the body. So to get a new knee, that's huge, man. And I
Yeah.
was so depressed, even though I knew better. The reason I went to them was because I thought maybe I had a meniscus tear. That's
Yeah.
an easy operation, and then you're better. Told me that, man. I went out with my wife. I was so depressed. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to deal with this, man. And I went to a student of mine, and she did about 8 sessions on my knee, something like 8 sessions.
Oh,
And
yeah. Which student?
she's dead now. She just died of cancer, believe it or not. Her name was Yin Yang,
Oh,
and
wow.
uh, and she just died of cancer. But she did like 8, 10 sessions. I can't remember exactly. No pain ever since. I've never had pain in that knee. After they did a diagnosis saying I needed a prosthetic or a new knee,
What the
um,
fuck, man?
and I have that all the time. In sometimes 2, 3 sessions, people just boom, they're better. Then I say, come back for some more because we want to integrate this into your whole body. But it's the fear that lives in the knee is one of the most fundamental fears that all of us deal with is the fear of death.
Oh, yeah. Is that in the knee?
Fear not
Okay.
only of physical death, but of physical death, of death of the body, but also death of the old, death of our conditioning, and moving into new spaces, new expanded spaces. That fear of the status quo, I don't want to let go. Yeah. I want to hold on to what I know. That's a safety zone for me. And that fear gets stuck in the knee. And you know, when you're very scared for whatever reason, whatever triggers it, your knees will start to shake. Yeah.
Ah,
If you're really scared, your knees will start to shake. So she worked on my knee and never had pain since in my knee. And I do that with God, so many people come with knee pains. And um, yeah, and they just get better, like pretty fast. Also, it doesn't usually take that long.
yeah. I should book a session with you
And
actually.
soft tissue contraction is,
Next time when I think the borders are open to Germany, I should book a session with you, maybe two in a row, because you live quite close to the Dutch border. Is that true?
I live in Cologne
Okay.
at least 5 months a year. Yeah.
Okay. And you stay there, but you have a training coming up in May. Is that so?
Yeah, I have a training coming up in May. I'll put this out to this group of people. I have a training coming up on the pelvis in Corfu, in
Oh,
this
in
Greek
Corfu even.
island of Corfu, in this beautiful place of Buddha Hall. And it's a beautiful group room. And we're on the island, and it's a beautiful place to do a training because in the space in between, we take long lunch. It's in June, so we take long lunch breaks and go into the evening later so that people can go to the beach and just enjoy the Greek sun.
Oh man,
Uh,
beautiful.
and have fun together there. So yeah, in June I have a training in Greece. It's on my website, myofascialtrainings.com, if anybody's interested. Working to release and balance the pelvis.
Amazing. Amazing. Master Sathyarti, I
Okay.
think we're already done for this
Good.
session. There's
Good.
so much information what you shared again. Deeply grateful, man. Yeah, and all different chapter of your expertise. We yeah, you shine light upon together. Yeah, it was just like the core of back pain, touching the core of back pain. That's like, wow, so many people could benefit from that. So many people. I hope, yeah, I hope you do as well as listeners. And yeah, I want to thank you again, Sajati, for being here. So myofascial trainings, to get more information, if you might be interested in booking a course, there will be a course of 6 days. Is that correct? Six
Yeah.
days, and yeah, directly a beautiful stay in Greece. So not only a holiday, but like directly and yeah, an in-depth, more awareness journey of your body and your emotions and your whole being, essentially. Beautiful, man.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Till
And
next.
I'll got the recording here. So thanks for being with me, and see you next episode.